going to be who is able to actually get their speed control off as well. Are you able to stagger your Tailwind? And I think a big piece of this to me is, does Andre lead that Chiyu to start, and does Yuki respond with Urshifu? But it's going to be Fluttermane and Tornadus here.
Fluttermane Tornadus versus this Urshifu and the Whimsicott. So both Pokemon that are able to actually give the speed advantage to either opponent on the field right away.
Crucially, this is going to be Steel Terra Urshifu, so if you go for that Steel Terra, you are able to resist most of the attacks coming out from the opposing side. This is going to be a Choice Specs Fluttermane, right? So if you commit to that Steel Terra, then Moonblast and Dazzling Gleam obviously aren't going to be doing a ton. Andres obviously knows this though, right? And I think right now Andres actually has the speed advantage, which works in his favor in the sense that if you Tailwind, you match the Tailwind, and you're putting on a lot of offensive pressure with Fluttermane. The question is, with Fluttermane, do you feel comfortable giving it up to a Surging Strikes, right? You're actually seeing this option of Urshifu just going for Detect, scouting out for a potential Terra from the opposing side. Yuki does get that Terra out.
So the Terra is going to be committed onto this Fluttermane. Fluttermane is now going to be able to get that Terra Fairy to boost up the Choice Specs damage that it can do with either the Dazzling Gleam or the Moonblast. Something that we don't actually see too often from Fluttermane anymore because they're usually playing some type of supportive role. So we'll also be able to see what this Fluttermane is going to lock into in terms of its Choice Specs attack, as we also see Andreas go for the Tailwind from that Tornadus as well, as it is just a single target Moonblast and it goes into the Whimsicott.
Yeah, that is going to do so much damage and a one-hit knockout. I mean, that's an absolutely huge call. Turn one, Yuki there, losing Whimsicott. I think one of the other options that Andres had available was actually clicking that Sunny Day. So Yuki may have been like, oh man, I let Urshifu trying to catch Chiyu. Chiyu actually didn't come out immediately. Let me go for the Protect there. But it just doesn't really work out at all. And Fluttermane just in such a phenomenal position. That Choice Specs Moonblast doing so much damage. Andres has the speed control here as well. So Yuki's going to be playing from behind. He's considering bringing in that Indie, saying maybe, hey, if I bring this out, I can try to set up a Trick Room, actually. But you're facing down so much damage from that Moonblast still from the opposing side. So a really brilliant turn by Andres turn one there. And, the Whimsicott here can't Protect, right? So hey, if I Tailwind plus Moonblast, at least that's like guaranteed damage into that slot.
But I think what's really tough here too is, yes, you can bring out the Indeedee, but now how do you actually protect this Urshifu from taking the Moonblast and just getting knocked out right away? Because you can't follow me that way completely. The Tornadus is still going to be able to actually hit you with something like a Bleak Wind Storm if that's going to connect as well.
Yeah, I'm wondering if the solution here is because Yuki crucially didn't set up that Tailwind on turn one, it feels like you have to Trick Room, right? So I wonder if it's Trick Room, Steel Terra, then Surging Strikes. By going for that, then you at least resist Bleak Wind Storm and Moonblast. Andres, of course, can go for a Sunny Day plus Moonblast. So then my question is, with Sunny Day, like if you're getting a special attack Photosynthesis boost, do you actually knock out the Indeedee? Is Indeedee bulky enough to survive Moonblast here even without a special attack Photosynthesis boost? It's actually going to be the switch into Calyrex here as well. So the idea is, let me set up Trick Room, let me try to get Calyrex out under Trick Room and just start clicking Astral Barrage or Expanding Force into everything. But this is a big, big turn. If Yuki does not get the Trick Room up, or if Calyrex faints, it'll be a disaster.
Ooh, a lot riding on what is going to be coming out from Andreas' side. Sunny Day will boost up this Fluttermane, giving it a Photosynthesis boost to its special attack. So not only do you have the Choice Specs, you've got the Terra Fairy, but Fluttermane is able to go for the Moonblast, and it's going to knock out probably something here. It's going to be into the Indeedee, and the Indeedee does not hang on. Another one-hit knockout for Andreas, and Yuki, just like that, no speed control, and down to his final two Pokemon in this first game.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to call it. I wasn't sure if it'd be special attack or speed Photosynthesis, because speed actually often makes a lot of sense where you're able to drop your opponent's speed, but special attack makes this Fluttermane literally as offensive as possible. You've got the Choice Specs, you've got the Photosynthesis boost as well, you've got the Fairy Terra, so that's just two knockouts, and I think like Yuki now really getting punished by not setting up that Tailwind immediately to start off this game. And this is what I mean, like speed control is everything in a matchup like this where both players have super offensive, super fast-paced teams. And so it's going to be really, really difficult here for Yuki. I think like turn one already was really hard. And I think it partially starts with the Urshifu being led into a Tornadus Fluttermane and then also just not getting anything off on that turn one. Like, I'm curious how different this game would have played out if it was just Surging Strikes into Fluttermane immediately on turn one.
It's just such a hard call to make because you are trying to play around what you think your opponent is also going to do. And if you make that call wrong, sometimes it really can go disastrously for you. But if you're able to get that call right, then all of a sudden things are snowballing in your favor. Still, a last-ditch attempt here by Yuki to try to get back into this game. As you see the Terrestrialization onto the Urshifu to become that Steel type, you're going to be resisting these Bleak Winds now, but you still do take a pretty good amount of damage. But the Moonblast Moonblast was angled into that Calyrex. So maybe some breathing room here for this Urshifu, as you have to hit these surging strikes in the sun, but you're still doing a pretty good amount of damage there too.
Yeah, I mean, this is good to know, right? Well, you're not going to knock out the Tornadus if the sun is up, but hey, if the sun isn't up, that would just be a knockout, right? So very, very crucial. Yuki kind of stays alive for another turn. The problem is you're still staring down this Tailwind, you're still staring down this Choice Specs Moonblast, right? And so, yeah, I think maybe the play here is you go for a double protect with Calyrex, or maybe you expect to survive the Moonblast, right? So if you think you're going to feint to Moonblast like Yuki thinks, he's going to go for the double, but he does not get it. So if Moonblast is launched into that slot, that Calyrex just feints.
Another Bleak Windstorm as well, so even if it wasn't going to be a one-hit knockout from the Moonblast, it's surely going to be able to do it now. And the speed drop just adds insult to injury as you see this Moonblast get fired off into the Calyrex. It's going to take a third KO of this game, and it's just the Urshifu left, and it looks like it is just climbing up a mountain here as we see the surging strikes. Finish up the job here is the Tornadus after we see another big boom, Aaron. And then we'll be able to see and look forward to a game number 2 between these two trainers.
Yeah, let's talk about what happened in this one, right? Like, for Andres, it was just, hey, I got speed control. You didn't even set up Tailwind. And I think that is, like, so disastrous. It creates this, like, chasing game of like, okay, I feel like I have to Tailwind just to match my opponent's Tailwind. Like, Yuki actually has the speed advantage in the sense that Calyrex is really, really fast, right? I think part of what makes this matchup difficult was not knowing the photosynthesis boost on Fluttermane, because if you're expecting a speed boost, then if Tailwinds are matched, then you have to worry about Fluttermane having that speed boost and just outspeeding your Calyrex. But hey, now you know, right? So Collision Course is going to come out. This is going to just do so much over KO to the Urshifu. Super effective, of course, getting that side effect as well. And a critical hit. Said, why not just a little bit more damage on top? But for Yuki, it's a lot about going back to the drawing board and specifically thinking about how do you play turn 1, because I think turn 1, he was probably expecting to see that Chiyu lead. Chiyu feels like it could be one of the most important Pokemon in that matchup. It didn't even come out.
Could have been that 4th Pokemon in the back there for Andreas, because we really only saw the Fluttermane and the Tornadus for the majority of that game, and it wasn't until the very end there that we saw Koraidon take the place of that Tornadus. But you almost always expect that the Restricted is going to come to one of these games.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense to always drop Landorus, right? What's Landorus really going to be doing here? Like, it doesn't have any defensive like capabilities, right? And it's like the offensive Tornadus, Fluttermane, Chiyu, and Koraidon feel so powerful. Indity is something you can weave into if you think you want to imprison the Expanding Force in the Trick Room from the opposing side. So that's one that I think in a best of 3 makes sense as an adjustment. And from Yuki's end, it's like Regidrago. It's such a cool Pokemon, but Regidrago into a Fluttermane, that's like the worst matchup, right? If you're bringing Regidrago, you either have to eliminate Fluttermane, and it's so hard to do that. We saw that Fluttermane was like the primary carry of that last game, right? And so I think it's like you probably go with the same Pokemon, but maybe in different order. For example, you could go Whimsicott Calyrex or Indity Calyrex that threatens with a lot more offense. I think Urshifu as a lead basically works if you get the Chiyu. If not, it is actually a liability because you're facing down that Sunny Day as well. And so I think you could go with Whimsicott Urshifu again, but you must be a little bit scared about seeing the exact same lead that we just saw in the previous game. But you at least now know, okay, this Fluttermane, it's a special attack boosting Fluttermane. It's not a speed boosting Fluttermane. It's all about Calyrex. Calyrex didn't get any damage off in that game, so I think it needs to be a lot more relevant in this one.
So I like the idea of being able to send out the Calyrex a little bit early, but if you do see the Fluttermane on the other side, I feel like that's also really tough to play around. The Calyrex Shadow on Yuki's team is Terra Dark. It's not like you can actually terrestrialize away from a weakness that the Fluttermane is going to be throwing at you. You're still going to get hit super effectively by a Moonblast or a Dazzling Gleam if you Terra.
Oh, Landorus did come out. Wow.
Okay, a big switch up here from Andreas as we do see that Landorus and Yuki going to change those leads as well with this Indeedee and Calyrex.
I'm actually pretty surprised to see Landorus here, so I'm curious to see where the game goes from here, because I think with Landorus, like, you don't have the most reliable damage with it, right? Like, you can miss, obviously, with Sandseer Storm. You can Earth Power here. Yuki making a big adjustment here, going with the Indeedee this time around. I like this call a lot from Yuki's end. I think basically there's so many different ways you could play with this, because you can actually threaten Trick Room, right? Hey, how do you deal with getting swept by Tailwind? Just set up your own Trick Room, right? And so there is also now, from the opposing side, you've got to be worried about Trick Rooms. So you're like, oh, maybe I don't click that Tailwind. But if you don't click Tailwind, you can just get blown up by Helping Hand, Astral / Expanding Force here. So this turn 1 alone, I think, is really exciting to me, because, yeah, there's just no defense against this right now, other than the Dark Terra Tornadus. So that's going to be the solution here, I think, from what we're seeing. Yeah.
Yeah. It is going to be that terrestrialization early commit onto Andreas' Tornadus, and at least we'll be able to survive one of these attacks, but this damage can really start to stack up here, and especially with the helping hand on top of a Life Orb Calyrex, the damage output is massive. So as we see, no protect, it's just going to be a hit from both, and Landorus gets knocked out in one go. And if that Tornadus had not terastallized, that would have also been another knockout.
Yeah, that's why I was like really surprised to see Landorus. Like, I don't feel like it actually puts on that much pressure against most, but maybe it was a countermeasure specifically to deal with potentially like Urshifu because you cover for the Steel Terra and you have Water Terra. Either way, I think Yuki off to a much better start this time around. The Dark Terra, if you don't go for that, you just faint, right? So the thing is now you can bring out something like that Flutter Mane. You can go for something like a Tailwind, of course, to get that speed advantage. I also think, I mean, I wonder if you go Sunny Day, like bring out Flutter Mane, Fairy Terra, Dazzling Gleam, and if that's enough to get a double knockout. But yeah, I think like basically...
You can't Terra.
Oh, I see,
yeah.
Yes.
Tornadus is already Terra,
yes,
so you
yes,
can't.
Yes, totally, yeah. And so, with the lack of Terra, I don't know, okay, it's Chi-Yu, but this Chi-Yu also doesn't have Snarl. So you only have Heat Wave. You could Sunny Day Heat Wave right now. I think that's probably the best bet. Yuki can't have a defensive Terra against that in this current moment other than Water Terra Entity, but what that means is you could protect Calyrex, Water Terra, Trick Room.
So that would be a good option here. You know you can't actually hit Psychic into either of these Pokemon because they do have that Dark typing. So I feel like just being able to go for that speed control makes sense.
So yeah, you're seeing the Trick Room hover here. The response could be just a potential Dark Pulse into the Entity slot, but I think this is generally pretty safe for Yuki to go for, and I really like Entity as the response. And this is where I was saying, where I was like, if you have your own Entity Mail, you can actually imprison the Entity, you can stop the Trick Room, you can even stop the Expanding Force here, but no Entity Mail coming out from the opposing side means that Yuki in a much, much better position this time around. So Water Terra coming out, and this is going to be a really, really nice defensive option, but it is the Dark Pulse.
Oh, it's a Dark Pulse into the Entity, but Calyrex is able to go for one more Astral Barrage. It's definitely going to be a knockout onto the Tornadus, but despite the fact that you got that special attack boost because of the knockout onto the Landorus, Chi-Yu is not going to be taken down just yet. But does this Entity actually flinch? That would be not so great, but it is able to actually get the Trick Room up.
Yeah, I really like this play by Yuki where it's like, oh, even if I lose my Entity, it means that you're Dark Pulsing into it. If you're Dark Pulsing into me, it means I get a huge Astral Barrage off, and now you're locked into Dark Pulse for the remainder of the game, right? So now Koraidon comes out, but I think Yuki can very safely just go for something like that, follow me into an Astral Barrage. So yeah, I think like Landorus is just a Pokemon that, once again, I'm a little bit surprised to see. I think like maybe the idea behind it was, hey, I expect like Steel Urshifu to Terra immediately turn one, so Landorus is like something that can deal well with Urshifu both before the Terra and after the Terra. But I think if you want to make an adjustment, it's either going back to Flutter Mane on the opposing side or maybe considering weaving in that Entity. But Entity Calyrex here, a really, really oppressive lead, right? And I think it's like leading Chi-Yu, for example, puts on a lot of pressure against this immediately. Chi-Yu was what I was talking about going into game one, so I'm curious if Yuki sticks with the same leader, goes back into Whimsicott plus Urshifu.
Follow Me here from the Entity is going to keep this Calyrex Shadow safe. Now it has +2 from the Grimnate boosts. So it should just be some quick work that this Calyrex is able to do for the rest of Andreas' team. Follow Me does redirect away the Flare Blitz, but because we ended up flipping these speeds, it's going to be the Calyrex that's able to move next. And if it wasn't going to be the Astral Barrage, you've got that Rocky Helmet recoil from the Flare Blitz. It's going to help out just a little bit as well.
This is just so much damage. I mean, poor Koraidon about to eat up this Astral Barrage. The Calyrex has gotten these boosts. You've got the special defense drop, the Life Orb, and Calyrex just does all the damage in this one. Astral Barrage, Astral Barrage, Astral Barrage, Astral Barrage.
We had Flutter Mane as Andreas' MVP in that first game, and now it was all about the Shadow Rider Calyrex. But as we head into this game number 3, game 1 and 2 were decided decisively. This was clear victories from either player. And so now, if it's the Flutter Mane, does Yuki switch things up? Is it going to be Andreas that's actually going to be the one that responds to this Entity lead?
Yeah, I think it's like, I just didn't love the Landorus in that previous game because it's slower. Like, and I think this adjustment was really cool as well. Like, I think the Landorus maybe also makes sense in the context of you expect like Whimsicott plus Urshifu, because the idea is, hey, I outspeed your Urshifu. But yeah, the question is like, does Yuki go into that? So I could actually see a scenario where like Yuki goes back to his game 1 lead of like Whimsicott Urshifu, and then we see the run back with Tornadus Landorus, right? But my guess is, okay, Landorus didn't feel good at all in that last game, so maybe you adjust to bringing the Chi-Yu. If you bring Chi-Yu though into Calyrex Inity, I think that definitely gives the advantage. However, if you face off against something like that initial Whimsicott Urshifu lead, things can be a lot scarier. And so I think the leads make a big difference here, and it's about how that turn 1 plays out, because it's been explosive absolutely throughout this set.
So quick on the decision making here when you are able to see like what those leads are going to be. And I think also in this situation for both Yuki and Andreas, you can't overthink it. I think it's really easy for you to get into a decision where if you're Yuki or Andreas, you go, oh, well, you know, my opponent led this, and so I think they're going to do this next game, and so I'm going to do this to respond.
Yeah.
And then you get yourself on the wrong side of the wheel as you take a look at the lead.
Exactly, yeah. I'm curious if it's going to be Torn Flutter, Torn Chi-Yu, Torn Landorus. I think like those are all possibilities, and I think Whims Urshifu makes sense as a response. But here we go, back to Tornadus Flutter main, and it is the response once again, back to Whimsicott Urshifu. So I think Yuki probably would have been a little bit happier seeing that Chi-Yu to start. One other thing I was thinking about, by the way, is on turn 1 here, you don't actually have to click Tailwind with Tornadus. I think you could just Sunny Day and attack immediately with the Flutter main, because then you actually get to stagger your Tailwind by a turn, which I think is a big deal. But I think Yuki's key lesson from last time is I should be clicking that Tailwind. If I click that Tailwind, it makes my Calyrex so much more relevant than in the previous game where Calyrex just got outsped. So I think, yeah, like it makes a ton of sense to consider this Tailwind, and I think if, I just think it makes, yeah, you kind of have to go for it.
I like the Tailwind as well, because if you're the only one that Tailwinds and Andreas does decide to go for Sunny Day, you could Encore the Tornadus, make sure it's actually going to be locked into going for support move. You're going to be the one with speed control.
There's the Sunny Day.
And Tornadus does go for that Sunny Day. So another photosynthesis boost going over to the Flutter main, but there is no terrestrialization from either Andreas or Yuki in this first turn.
All right, so let's see. Flutter main could, of course, lock into Shadow Ball, could go for Dazzling Gleam, could go for Moonblast, but Surging is going to hit the Flutter, and this is what I was saying. If you set up that Sunny Day, you just reduce that Surging Strike's damage, and so, yeah, Flutter main, you know, not going to be bulky enough to take it outside of the Sun, but Sun means you get to survive with it, stagger by a turn. You still have to deal with this Calyrex waiting in the back, though, so it's going to be that Dazzling Gleam, though, so actually really nice call. Doesn't go for the Terra there, gets the knockout onto Urshifu, and it does so much damage onto Whimsicott, but now you do get a free switch in into that Calyrex.
So Calyrex with the speed too. I mean, Yuki now is pretty safe to be able to go for the Encore into the Tornadus. Just go for the Astral Barrage now, knowing that your Shadow Rider Calyrex is that much faster. So.
Yeah. This is where it gets really crazy, because Tornadus' Terra is Dark, so you could Dark Terra to get around Prankster Encore working against you. That also works against Astral Barrage. It means you can set up a Tailwind, right? So I think it's like Tornadus here actually really scary specifically because of Dark Terra. However, of course, it means that you can just launch Moonblast plus Astral Barrage right now instead of going for that Encore, right? And so because Flutter is slower here, that's a big deal. Okay, Yuki's actually considering switching into the Indy here, though. Ooh, this is a little bit scary, I think. Should Tornadus opt to just go for that Dark Terra and set up a Tailwind?
Or maybe Andreas switches out the Tornadus?
Yeah, I think the problem is there's nothing to switch into because everything takes an Astral Barrage unless you specifically have Indy Mail in the back. That's the other piece of the equation I was saying as an adjustment you could potentially make, and I actually think it would be really, really strong as a potential fourth option. The other thing, by the way, is you don't necessarily need to go for a Tailwind with Tornadus this turn. You could go for something like a Bleak Wind or an Icy Wind, but it's going to be the Flutter main switching, so is it Indy coming out?
That would be amazing.
Okay,
no,
Chi-Yu.
it's just going to be the Chi-Yu.
That's pretty darn good to have here out, though, honestly.
Absolutely. I mean, it's going to be another way for you to be able to actually resist one of these Astral Barrages, and we do see the Terrestrialization committed onto the Tornadus. So double Dark types here for Andreas to survive this Astral Barrage.
Yeah, and I'm guessing because you have Chi-Yu in the back, like it makes sense to just click Tailwind here, right? This means that now you have a Chi-Yu in Tailwind into Yuki's team, which is really oppressive, and it is going to be that Tailwind. So Dark Terra basically would have covered for a potential Encore that turn, and now it's just Astral Barrage, but it's not going to do that much damage with both of these now being Dark types. But let's see, how much does it do? Okay, I said not that much, but you know, Tornadoes is like, oh, I got hurt by that.
Yes, definitely. But there isn't really much that this Ndidi can do. You can go for the Terra Water with the Trick Room. At least it would be able to resist the fire type attacks from the Chi-Yu. But we also saw that even Dark Pulse with a Terra is still going to do a lot to that Ndidi. So would the double up of something like a Dark Pulse as well as a Bleak Wind Storm actually allow this Ndidi to like get a Trick Room off or go for something like that?
This is the key turn in the game, I think. You can see Yuki considering helping hand into the Calyrex and maybe just going for Astral Broad, saying, look, I'm going to get a double knockout. You could, of course, Dark Terra here with the Calyrex as well. The risk here is if Chi-Yu decides to go for that overheat. Oh, this is such a big turn. Will Yuki call it correctly? Does Chi-Yu potentially go for that single target overheat into the Calyrex? That would just knock it out. It would outspeed and completely win the game. So what does Calyrex go for here? What does Chi-Yu go for?
That's going to have to be the helping hand first, and then we get a chance to see how the Chi-Yu and this Shadow Rider Calyrex are going to interact.
Oh, it's overheat, but what did it target?
But the overheat actually went into Ndidi! And Ndidi gets knocked out in one hit, but that leaves this Calyrex free and clear to go for this Astral Barrage, and that should just be a two-hit knockout.
Oh my goodness, and actually click the overheat, but into the other slot, trying to eliminate the threat of Trick Room. Helping hand, Life Orb, doesn't care about these resistances as Calyrex gets a double knockout. And now you've got Fluttermane left in the back with Koraidon, but can they handle a Calyrex right now? The Fluttermane, of course, is Choice Specs, and it can't protect, and this Calyrex is so fast. This is where the booster special attack works against Andres.
Oh my gosh, the Whimsicott gets to come in here. And I think this is still the interesting situation. You have the Tailwind that got staggered by Andreas, so there is a possibility here of Andreas being able to just, you know, protect the Koraidon at least, maybe be able to go for something later, but...
Yeah, I think Calyrex just outspeeds here, though, is the problem, right? Yeah, like, you just, like, full to Astral Barrage or Expanding Force.
And Fluttermane can't protect because it's Choice Specs.
Exactly, yeah, and so, like, this is where it's like, oh, if it were Speed Booster, then, yeah, you would kind of have a shot here, but yeah, I think the game is just over from that turn. That's why I was saying this is the key turn, right? This overheat go into the Calyrex slot. Is it a Dark Pulse? And so, we did see the overheat, but it wasn't into the right slot here. Both sides still have Tailwind up, so Calyrex here can just freely attack, and I think you just helping hand Astral Barrage double knockout once again.
Shadow Rider Calyrex has been truly the MVP, but we are going to see a single target attack instead, I think, from this.
It's Expanding Force, Psychic Terrain is up,
oh,
so
that's
yeah,
true.
it does manage to hit both.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Super effective attack to the Koraidon regardless.
You could go for anything, honestly, but you try to click that Expanding Force button. Yeah, exactly. And oh my goodness, this is what makes Hyper Offense Calyrex so scary. It can just knock out every single Pokemon. Helping Hand, Expanding Force, so much damage. It's gonna outspeed, and that will be the double knockout as Yuki secures a spot in top 4.
Congratulations to Yuki Zaninovich, moving on to the next round of our top cut bracket. And after, I feel like he's been kind of craving a good result, right? He's been working so hard, really trying to get that regional championship title. And I think this is one of those matches that you look at, it's like very slim margins for both players to actually get the win.
This is a scary matchup because it's like so much of it comes down to just like one turn. Game 1, in my opinion, was decided on turn 1, right? Game 3 was decided essentially on that turn with Ndidi. And I think Yuki's play made a lot.